came to introduce himself. And the first thing that stunned me was there has been this increase in age on my part. Because when I look at him, I think of someone who's like 16 years old, only to find out that he tells me that he's the same age as my youngest daughter, who's 23. So it's remarkable when I look out in this audience and I see so many bright, talented young people who are future ambassadors in this space around cybersecurity. And I hope that a few words that we share today will encourage you, will compel you to consider this space. There are millions of jobs waiting for you. And I think I heard Denise earlier say coming out of school making 90,000. No, that's on the low side. There are opportunities to come in off the street out of college doing some amazing things. And the interesting part about that is you don't necessarily, I want to put a plug in first of all for the cybersecurity discipline itself. But you can pretty much major in several different facets throughout your career and end up having a tremendous impact from a cybersecurity perspective. And so I don't think they've got my presentation set up yet, so we're going to see how we're going to run with this. So while they're doing that, just to kind of fill the time, got home last night from DC and got home and was afraid to turn on TNT because of the concerns that I've had about what might be true if I turn that channel on because of what happened on Sunday. I was in the airport landing in DC when there was 3.6 seconds of the clock and they were passing the ball to Ja. And I saw him going in and he missed the shot, and I actually wanted to get back on the plane and get back on. But what he did last night was remarkable. I think it's going to be tough in the next few days for sure, because we've got to go out to the West Coast and hit that Dylan put on that young man and the hit that we put on the other gentleman. I think it's going to be a ravage fight for us. So keep up the spirit. I'm hoping we make it to the next round and we take the Suns out and then we can take out whoever the East has. So here we are 2 years later, right? Post-pandemic, and I asked you how we positioned as a society, as a set of core organizations and companies in your own personal lives, right? What we face as an economy, both from a business and from a technology perspective, is unprecedented, right? The world didn't stop when the pandemic took place. And there are certain things that are beginning to trend. And we're going to speak on them, both from a business and a technology perspective. We will introduce you to some concepts that may be new to you, right? And they may not mean anything to you based on where you are in your careers, but you need to take note because cyber has become more than a technology issue. It has become a business enigma. And companies are facing challenges in trying to understand how do they interleave cyber into the context of what they do as organizations as they build out their go-to-market strategies. And so there are two numbers that I want you to remember, 182 and 48. And if by chance your recall is not as good as others, maybe write that down because in a second we're going to come back to that number. So the world we live in is increasingly complex. It is becoming more and more complex each and every day, right? This growing connectedness is outpacing the risk that we face. Some of you feel it, some of you don't necessarily feel it. But we face this existential challenge that has unbounded possibilities in terms of the implications that it can have. The cyber revolution is not evolving. The cyber revolution is upon us. And it bodes for actions, it bodes for talent, it bodes for response in order for us to be successful. So, how many folks in this room know who John Chambers is? I didn't expect any hands to go up, right? John Chambers was a relevant persona in the mid-90s to the late 2000s. John Chambers was the CEO of Cisco Systems, which was critical, and they were a poster child company in Silicon Valley in the middle 90s and the early 2000s when the internet was becoming right? And they were one of the critical infrastructure companies. And one of the things that John said was, when businesses don't disrupt themselves, they are disrupted, right? In essence, saying you have to constantly understand the need for change and be able to embrace change at the right time to continue to be relevant. In my early career days, my wife would say to me, Tony, if you aren't constantly reinventing yourself, you are becoming irrelevant. I don't think she meant it in terms of our relationship. I think she meant it in terms of being in the business sector, right? So, but it is critically important that we do this in cybersecurity specifically because threat actors are challenging us to constantly reevaluate the strategies that we have and our ability to ward off some of the innovative things that they're bringing forward. And if we aren't constantly reevaluating, reassessing our strategies and our capabilities, we will be disrupted. So, and there's a few items that are trending in terms of market, in terms of tech, right? That's not necessarily directly related to cybersecurity, but is important for you to understand. There's this notion of product and customer centricity. Product centricity is when companies like Apple says, you know what, we're going to create a product, it's going to be great, we're not going to tell our customers about it, we're going to introduce it to market, and they're going to consume it, right? And now, who is willing to leave their homes without their iPhones, right? And so now you see this integration that's happening across all these tech vendors that are coming together that's making the ecosystem, right? You have cloud that is now enabling speed and agility and economics and transformation that's allowing organizations to reinvent themselves. You have this intelligent processing that's happening at the network edge, which in essence means you don't have to necessarily go to some core central processing system. We now give you data, right, at your fingertips. We give you applications at your fingertips. We give you intelligence, where you make decisions with instruments that sit in your hands. And so the world around us is significantly changing. And everything is being done in software. So if anyone has a vision for themselves of becoming software engineers, you sit on a sweet spot. Because even in cyber, everything is being created as code. Even in cloud, everything is being generated as code. And so organizations are now beginning to embrace artificial intelligence and machine learning and advanced analytics, not simply to gain insights, but also to actually change their businesses. Because speed to market, the ability to remain relevant as a business is incumbent upon it. So having data scientists exist in cyber is a realism. You don't have to necessarily be a network engineer to do well within the cyber arena. And so alongside these trends, we see these diverse set of threat actors that are emerging, right? We have both sophisticated threat actors. We're talking about nation states like Russia and China and Korea and Iran that's taking some pretty stealthy types of actions against organizations, either for geopolitical purposes, for extortion, or for some other reasons. And then you have unsophisticated actors. You have these 15 and 17-year-old kids in their back rooms that's attacking these companies and causing all sorts of disruption. So we see crowdsourcing happening, we see communities being created, we see like-minded groups coming together, we see these innovative collaboration, co-creation all occurring because cyber has become lucrative. And the cost of entry is now cheap because of things such as ransomware servers, right? No longer do I have to hire someone to build a piece of malware for me or to execute the malware on my behalf or to create the test cases against it. I can go out and release a service for a period of time and go in and cause havoc in organizations. Last year we saw impacts organizations such as SolarWinds, right? We saw impact organizations such as a gas line organization. We saw JBS Foods, where some of you guys are probably getting your steaks for your Friday night dinners. All these organizations across all these sectors are being impacted by these threat actors because they have no respect of person, they have no respect of company, right? If you are vulnerable, they will attack you, and then they will extort you for potential gain. So we being Booz Allen, the company I work for, alongside a company called Forrester, did a survey. We talked to cybersecurity leaders across 250 countries, right, in North America and Europe. And we asked them two things. Tell us, do you believe that you are prepared to ward off a ransomware attack if you were to get hit today? But also, if you have already been impacted by ransomware, how well did you do? These statistics are from parts of the organizations that were actually hit by ransomware. And as you can see, none of them fared very well, right? Either they weren't able to detect they had a problem, it took them too long to actually solve the problem, they didn't have playbooks in place. In some cases, what the threat actors were asking for was substantive in nature. Of the ones that we spoke to, the highest ransomware that we saw being extorted was 24 million. But by no extreme is that the largest ransomware that we're seeing in place coming forward to today. So I told you earlier to remember two numbers, 182 and 48. 2 years ago, 182 was the number of days that an advanced threat actor would find its way inside of an organization's enterprise and dwell absent of anyone inside that organization knowing that they had been attacked. That number has come down to less than 50, right? So there's good news and there's bad news, right? It doesn't mean that organizations have gotten so much advanced in terms of their detection capabilities. The reality is that the tactics have changed because organizations, the threat actors have started to go after earlier detection, extortion, double, triple, quadruple extortion of organizations, getting out, exfiltrating data, right? And then making it known that they've attacked those organizations. So organizations are now faced with a dilemma of creating an end-to-end model that allows them to protect their digital estate and do it in a more innovative fashion going forward. And so I want to touch on a few industry areas because as you start thinking about your careers going forward, there's a reality, right? Organizations are in the business to make money. They're looking for innovative methods by which they can accomplish that. And they're looking for talent that can extend over to these different technology stack areas. Cloud is one. Organizations are no longer building large-scale enterprise solutions in their own data centers within their own organizations. They're going out to the Microsofts and the Googles and the Amazons and the Oracles of the world, and they're releasing this technology and running their applications there, right? But the challenge is as you move those workloads into the cloud, the ability to protect those have to be done. When we see these common themes that security practitioners are helping organizations solve. One is poor visibility. I don't know what I have in the cloud, and so I don't know whether it's being protected as it should be. Because when I was running security operations inside the organization, I understood what that looked like. But now that we're running services in the cloud, I don't know how to protect it. Missing trade credit. So within my enterprise, I normally have these collection of tools that I use, these processes that I bring to bear when I'm protecting my workloads. But as I move into these cloud service providers, they require something different. So will that translate? And the other being, how do we have these tools that exist native to these cloud service providers, whether it be Amazon or Google or Microsoft or Oracle? How do I not train up my personnel such that they understand how to take advantage of these cloud native integrations and bring those to bear and address those? And then last, the most prominent issue with moving to the cloud for organizations is that people put applications in the cloud and they don't configure them correctly, right? Bad actors come along, they run scans, they identify gaps and vulnerabilities, and they attack and they bring to bear the exposures associated with that. And organizations are impacted from a brand perspective or from a company's perspective. And so it's simple. Building out as you move into your careers as being potential cloud security engineers, there are guiding principles that are associated with what is common and foundational for that exercise. One is architecture matters, right? As you become engineers, as you become architects, there are going to be some foundational principles in building out what's referred to these reference architectures, which are the blueprints, which are the design patterns that you create and that you take into organizations and you provide such that it's reusable, that you can take from one customer to another customer, from one cloud provider to another cloud provider, and you help organizations build in security by design by bringing forth those types of architectures. It's learning to be software engineers, right? And recognizing that even though hardware will exist, everything moves by software. So infrastructure is code, policy is code, compliance is code. What does that translate to when you're sitting in a classroom and you're learning how to code across these different languages? Look at the destination for where you're headed. You're going to be able to help organizations build major business functionality that they will deliver to their customers because you are doing it in a secure fashion, because you learn how to understand and build infrastructure as code. Then analytics. If you're not interested in going software engineering, not interested necessarily in doing some infrastructure-related careers, become data scientists, right? Understand machine learning models and artificial intelligence and advanced analytics, because those are critically important in cyber. Understanding the fidelity of data, right, and what the data is telling us, and to do predictive analytics so that we can hopefully proactively prevent a cyber event from taking place. And this is a scary chart, and can be a scary chart, right? It is, as organizations are building their software, when a business comes to an IT organization and says, we need to go to market with specific capabilities, right? But we also need to have the ability to do that in a fast way, right? The software development lifecycle is a mechanism that allows us to understand where do we plug in security such that we can do security by design, right? I spoke earlier about the necessity of ensuring that when a product goes to market, it is secure at the entry point of market. And having the ability to take a software developer, give him security capabilities in addition to operational capabilities, brings forward what we refer to as DevSecOps, development, security, and operations, this discipline that industry is looking for. No longer is being a software developer sufficient existing in the cloud world anymore. You have to be a full stack developer, which means you understand development, you understand security, you understand operations, so when applications are put into production. And so, I'm not going to touch on OT because I suspect with the age of this audience, you haven't seen OT in your lifetime. And probably, hopefully, by the time you graduate from college, most of you will be gone. Right? So, but quickly, this is an area that's near and dear to me. I actually wrote a white paper on product security. Everything we do, every part of our life, is associated with something that's digitally connected. Right? Whether it's involving our health, whether it's involving what we do to enjoy life, whether it's involving how we do our transportation, how we do our communications. One of the biggest challenge areas for organizations now is that products are being created so quickly they can connect that are not secure. A major organization on the West Coast was hacked through a thermostat. Right? A thermostat that just happened to be connected to the internet. They hacked into the organization through a thermostat, gravitated across the organization, gained access to a database, exfiltrated data because it was a connected instrument. Hey, I love having my smart thermostat. I love having the ability to sit in my lounge chair, turn up and turn down the heat and air, right? But it can serve as an attack vector, right? So all these connected devices are becoming challenges for us. And we did a recent survey with Gartner where we looked at the trajectory of areas that have the most upside associated with cybersecurity, and product security was sitting at the top, right? So a space that in time where I spend a lot of time with organizations having the conversation. So I love my wife's car, right? Every so often she lets me drive it. Right? It's a very connected car, right? And so But the decomposition of that hard has all these different computers that's in it, right? And all these computers that have these messaging buses and all these connections externally. Over 150 embedded digital computers or devices that control every function in the car, right? And I can't tell you, and we've done, within our organization, we've done some decomposition of some of the instruments that run inside of cars, and you would be stunned in terms of how easy it is to reverse engineer and find vulnerabilities associated with that and actually bring to bear safety issues that could render loss of life if a malicious attacker were to take advantage of those, right? And so whether it's the automobile industry, whether it's the medical tech industry, where you have a heart defibrillator, right, that's on your heart controlling pulse sensations into your heart because you have challenges there being connected, right? There are safety issues associated with the challenges that we face in the product security space. So unique places of opportunity for you guys for your careers going forward. And so the last topic I'll touch on is on zero trust, right? So does anyone know or heard the term zero trust? Okay. So young man here, in your mind, what does zero trust mean?
It means like you don't trust them no matter how close they are.
Can't hear you. Speak up.
It means you don't trust them no matter how close they are because it's zero.
Okay. I didn't quite catch that, but I think you can stand up here and be heard. Look at the mic there.
If you have a question, just raise your hand, I'll get it to you.
It means you don't trust them no matter how hard, no matter how close they are to you because you have zero trust in them.
Okay, the concept is right. Okay. Anyone else from a cyber perspective? Anyone over here?
It means like you don't trust nobody, like you don't trust nobody or nothing because you have zero trust.
So, how many folks in here have a job? Okay. How many folks in here think your company has been compromised? Okay, let me ask the question the other way. How many folks in here believe your company has never been compromised? Okay, I have a hand in the back. So there are, let me news alert. There are two types of companies that exist. There are only two types of companies in the world that exist. The company that's been compromised and the company that doesn't know yet that they've been compromised. Okay? Because if you have any digitally connected instrument that connects to the outside world, in some form or fashion, you can infiltrate it and you can compromise. To what extent is what differs. I mentioned earlier this whole notion of digital trust and it extending out. Everything we do going forward is going to be digital in nature, right? When you go to a hospital, when you drive your cars, when you go on vacations, everything's going to be digital in nature. So this whole notion of zero trust is this concept that says organizations should continue to survive, right? Talent that comes into the cybersecurity arena has to understand these disciplines that are associated with this. There are these frameworks that are bent around these 7 pillars. And I want you to remember this, right? An identity, and a digital identity, is anything that can activate something to happen. An identity can be you have an identity, and I would argue that you have multiple personas, some of which you don't even know, right? So all of you guys have multiple personas, and all of you all have multiple digital personas as humans. There are entity personas. An application can be a persona, right? A widget can be a persona if it can take an action. And so the whole zero trust model, right, where cyber is headed is this whole notion that you've got these pillars and you've got these spectrums of trust, right? You've got these adaptive controls that are necessary based on what's happening at a point in time and why it's happening, right? And so it's got 3 guiding principles, right? Assume you've been breached already. There is no trusted network. right? And also least privileged access. So only give people what they need, not what they desire, right? Okay? So also recognize the fact that you have to treat every organization, every access a little bit different, okay? So personas, users and devices, and then that which is being consumed, applications, networks, and services, right? It means that this overlay that says, I need analytics, I need visibility, I need orchestration, right? All things have to come together, and these utilities of services come together to make up an ecosystem that helps describe how cyber will be understood going forward. How do we create these zero trust paradigms that address digital trust, that don't inhibit organizations from progressing, but also reduces and mitigates the attack surface and saves companies from detrimental impact, right? Yeah. So I will leave you with this as I started. The world is very complex, right? This global attack surface is going to continue to evolve. And the sophistication of attacks is going to continue to get crazy and crazy. Cyber strategies are going to have to line up to that. And I didn't even get into things like metaverse. Who's heard of metaverse? Right? Oh, the hands go up now. We talk about AR and DR, the hands go up. Okay, and I didn't get too much into quantum computing or get into things like blockchain. That's for another day. But we're on a journey. We're not on a destination in terms of cyber. There are literally millions of jobs and opportunities that are sitting on the other side if you're interested. You can be a cybersecurity practitioner, you can be a software developer, you can be a data scientist, you can be a liberal arts graduate, right? You can be a psychology graduate, because we do a lot of social engineering, reverse engineering of what threat actors are thinking, so that we know how to predict what we need to predict. So these young minds, these talented young minds in this room, will absolutely come and go with us on this journey. So thank you for your time, and appreciate your opportunity.